Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Future of Sales. I'm your host, Sahil Mansouri, CEO of Bravado. And with me today is another guest from the booming Atlanta tech scene, Garrett Leigh, who is the Director of Sales at Springbot. Garrett, thanks for joining us. Welcome to The Future of Sales.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me on, Sahil.
Yeah, really excited, man. So just for the benefit of those listeners who are not as familiar with Springbot, perhaps you could give us a little brief overview.
Yeah, so we, started as more of like a data and analytics company, letting customers take actionable, getting actionable insights from their data and actually taking data-driven actions that make sense. And we've come full circle. We've come a much longer way than just providing interesting data. Now we give people the ability to automate a lot of their actions and make much more informed decisions. And we kind of pride ourselves on having this all-in-one concept, which is something that was missing from the market.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so I think one of the things that we found on hosting these shows is everyone's got a very unique story into how they ended up in sales, what their first sales job was when they first discovered that they were going to be a salesperson. I would love to hear your origin story.
Yeah. So I was a hockey player for a while, and my mom was always in sales. She was a C-level at several different large corporate organizations. And so I always heard about a lot of what went on in sales and different models. And when I was done playing hockey, I played before college, during, and after a little bit. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I got involved in the first medical marijuana business in Boulder County, oddly enough. And so that, kind of propelled me into the workforce in the opposite way that most people do. I was a co-founder. We made a lot of mistakes, and eventually we sold the business. We were acquired after 3.5 years. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I was in Florida, in West Palm at the time. And I met a recruiter at a friend's bar. And she was like, I recruit for this Japanese holding company. It's plastic surgery. And she didn't really tell me a lot about exactly what it was. She was like, but you would do great. You should be in sales. You also have great hair. And I was like, okay, thank you. And I found out it was for Adirond's. It was Hair Club for Men was the opportunity that she had. And it was so strange to me and so foreign. I grew up in a hockey locker room. I had no real sales experience. I had more of an operational background, and that's what I was kind of pursuing. But I wanted a reason to leave Florida, and I had never really lived anywhere for more than 2 or 3 years. So I was like, I'll go to Atlanta for a couple of years, do this and see what happens, and then leave. And I loved the sales aspect. I got trained to run the business essentially from more of an operational standpoint, but I still had to sell when someone wasn't available. And I used to travel to different markets to do this from time to time. And I learned so much about sales in an environment that I never thought I would be in, and in a mode of sales that was just abnormal to me. It's such an emotional, psychological sale, any kind of plastic surgery. And it was so far out of my comfort zone. I wasn't super passionate, to be honest, about what I was doing. It was just kind of something to build my resume and make money. And I decided, okay, I wanted to be a part of building an organization and doing something I'm passionate about that I had done in the past, but not be the one responsible for signing paychecks and those kinds of things, and kind of avoiding any kind of added responsibility beyond my role. And so I got in touch with Springbot very early stages, and I had a really interesting conversation with my now VP of sales and our CTO, Joe Reger, around his interest in me stemming from my psychology background mixed with the type of emotional sales that I was involved in. He's like, I think that Springbot is going in this direction to where we're really going to need to understand people, and because their businesses are essentially just an extension of who they are as a person. And we really need people that can connect with them understand their problems and, kind of build them back up and build trust in that sales relationship. And he's like, right now, I think we're just doing a lot of value dropping and we're just, reading rehearsed lines about why our product's great. And we need people that can do this. So I was so excited. And when I came on, we had like 9 people, and on the sales side now, just, we're approaching like 75. So it's been a very fun experience building up this team and watching the company grow and getting to kind of work cohesively with all the different departments. And, that's the short version of how I got into sales or why I was excited for this opportunity, which I've learned a lot from.
And how long have you been with Springbot?
So almost 4 years, which I tell everybody that's like, it's like 8 years at a lot of other places in terms of blood, sweat, and tears that we've all had to pour in for a lot of the people who have been here for the last like 3 to 4 years.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So, one of the main reasons that we got in touch was because, we've been doing some research around the stigma of salespeople and, both for those who enter the profession, for those that are in the profession, dealing with customers. And I think you had some thoughts around, kind of the general ethos and culture of sales as an industry, as a profession, and then specific to your role. Would love to dive into that because I think that's something that, we don't discuss nearly enough.
Yeah. The stigma of sales, I think for a lot of people, especially newer reps that haven't, seen a lot of different types of sales models and seen a lot of different industries, you start to get the feeling that you're unwanted or that you're a pest or that, people inherently don't want to talk to you. And one of the things that I always remind people is like, this is how business has been done for hundreds, if not thousands of years. People getting together and sharing ideas around how they can help each other, right? And, so one of the questions I was asked by Ashley when I first started speaking with you guys was around like, have you ever been embarrassed to be a salesperson? I was like, absolutely not. I take this approach, like I sort of take what I would consider like the Eastern medicine approach to sales versus what I think has kind of been shoved down everybody's throats the last 20 plus years or so since I've been alive around, crushing your number and being the best and influencing people to do things that maybe aren't good for them just to help yourself. And I don't think that that's what salespeople should be doing or that's how they should think. I think you need to have this very methodical psychological approach to who is the person that I'm talking to, right? When we're looking at an enterprise level sale, we're selling not to a company, we are on paper, but we're selling to a person and typically, not a stakeholder in the business. We're selling to someone on the premise of how am I going to make their life better and why should they even care about a change of process or a switch of software, right? We have to understand what motivates that individual in order to speak to them. And when we're selling to a stakeholder, let's say it's, small to mid-sized market e-commerce, and we're selling to a proprietor, an owner of a business, we need to understand similar things. What motivates this person? Who are they? How do they speak? What kind of inflection of tone do they use when they talk to you? What type of questions are they asking me? There's so many key indicators around how someone communicates with you that should tell you how should I be communicating back with them? And once you start to display yourself as an expert in whatever you do, and not by dropping, knowledge and statistics around whatever product you have, because at the end of the day, like no one really cares, right? Before they trust you, there's this wall. And I think that wall is really representative of the stigma of sales. And it's just a constant game of chipping away at that wall and getting them to trust you and see, I am a person, I have rational thought, I care about whatever it is that you care about, and I'm going to display that in the way that I talk to you. And so I think every single call or meeting is an opportunity to demolish the stigma of sales. If you believe that there is one, or if you believe it has a negative connotation, or if you're low on your confidence because people have been hanging up on you when you call, or people haven't been showing up to your follow-ups, it's not a matter of sales being bad. It's a matter of what am I not doing the right way, because this is just a human to human interaction. And it's one that's been going on for hundreds, again, if not thousands of years. And I think we're getting to this point. It's very interesting with what Bravado does, but we're getting to this point where user generated content is at the epicenter of trust with the internet and globalization. And the more your brand is built on trust and being responsible and holding yourself accountable to what you tell people, and there's a measurement of that, and you can measure that success tangibly in some way, it's so much easier to eliminate that stigma of sales. And that's one of the things I think is so exciting about the environment that we're in 2018.
There was a lot there that I found myself just like shaking my head and agreeing with you on. The two most salient points that I would like to dive into are, one, that wall that you mentioned, which I think is really interesting. And the second half of it is around user-generated content. And so why don't we start with the wall? Because I think that's, the outset of the experience for most salespeople, which is when you start in sales, especially in tech sales, you typically start as an SDR, right? That's the standard, first role out of school sort of thing. And when you start as an SDR, you end up very quickly realizing that you need to bring your battering ram to work with you every day. And it's people spew things like it's a numbers game, and people say like if someone doesn't answer after 5 calls, what should you do? We'll make a 6th. There's a lot of that sort of vernacular that permeates its way throughout sales. And I would have to say that I think there's something misguided about that. Notably the fact that trying to coerce, I think we've all had the experience of walking through a mall. Not that people go to malls anymore, but at least us old people used to go to malls, Garrett. And I distinctly recall, there'd be these like kiosks or carts in the middle, and someone would be selling like Dead Sea salt or something.
I cannot believe that you're using this example. I literally use this in my training model for new BDRs when I talk about how good you can be at, but anyway, keep going. I'm sorry, but that's crazy.
I don't know why I've never really mentioned this specific thing before, but it was just relevant. I went to Israel recently, and I guess I got to actually do the Dead Sea float. So maybe that was part of it. But you have these people that are coming up to you, and they're trying to convince you to apply some of their scrub on their hands, and then you go, and it's this like very heavy push, right? It's this like aggressive sort of model of like trying to pluck someone out of their day and like, kind of I wanted to say coerce, but it's like kind of shove them into your kiosk and into the experience. And I distinctly remember every time I would see that, I would just like take 2 steps to the left away from that person and would try to like avoid interacting with that person, just because it's uncomfortable to be like, no, ma'am, or no, sir, I don't want your like sea scrub salt.
And they know this.
They know that, and I know that, and we both know that we both know that, and yet we're doing it. And so, to me, there's something inherently wrong psychologically, and I have a background in psych as well, so I really appreciate your take on that. But there's something really wrong psychologically with trying to shove someone or force someone to do something they don't want to do, when our ethos as salespeople is to serve customers and put them first.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny, like, that you're using this as an example. I like to pull people in, and I tell this story. I was in high school. They used to let us leave for lunch then. I don't know if that's a thing now. And we'd go to this mall, and I'd usually get like pizza or whatever. And I remember like walking down, this woman grabbed me, and she grabbed my arm. She started massaging my arm right away. And I was just like, what's going on? And she starts selling me immediately on this Dead Sea soap. And I had like $20 to my name. And she got it from me. And I always talk to people about this example. I'm like, we don't want to influence someone to do something they don't want to do. That's not going to help our business at the end of the day. We are here to do the right thing by this customer. And if that means not upselling them on a package that's far too expansive for them, or if that means not upselling them on a package at all because it's not a good fit, or if maybe they need to do more work before they're actually in a position to see the benefit from what we do, it maybe hurts at that moment, but that's your brand and that's the book of business that you're building for yourself. And if you want to build it on misinformation, and I think coercion is a great word, like influence is so powerful. And I've seen a lot of great salespeople that aren't even aware of how powerful their influencing skills are. And they're able to get people to do things that other people can't and that maybe aren't in their best interest. And they're sometimes not even aware of it. And I think that's where, as leadership in any sales organization, like you have to be focused on doing the right thing. And a colleague of mine, mentioned something to me last week that was so profound. And he said, we talk about the customer success end of a business so much. We're so focused on sales, we're so focused on hitting a number, but at the same time, we also are so focused on customer success because that is what's going to give our business longevity. And that's what's going to give, ultimately, it's like a baton handoff in a relay. That's what's going to continue this customer's excitement and their experience in terms of onboarding with a new product. And, one of the things that we've been talking about in terms of our ethos and our messaging to, our newer reps and the people that we're training is, do not be aggressive in the sale. We will be extraordinarily aggressive in the onboarding process because that is a point where the customer is vulnerable. They're wondering, did I make the right choice? Did I overspend? Is this really going to make me the money that so-and-so promised? And it's such an important part of sales. You have to be so aligned in terms of selling someone on what they need with the right idea, but also having that handoff be just as impactful and just as personalized. And we don't, and I say we, like wherever I am, like I don't want reps having that mentality around do whatever it takes to get the sale. If it's the right thing, sure, go above and beyond. But if it's crossing out of that gray area where, maybe this isn't the right thing, or this, what I'm telling them does not make sense, or this isn't the truth. And that's where I think sales, again, going back to stigma, that's where it stems from. It's people not doing the right thing. And again, user-generated content, this is a forum for people to see, wow, there's other people in my position, whatever it is, whether they're just consumers or if they're buying B2B or whatever the case may be. This company took care of them, or this product worked the way they said it would, or this person actually stood by their words, whatever it is. And I think that's helping to destroy the stigma of sales in a lot of facets of retail distribution. You look at how important reviews are on e-commerce retail sites. And now I think you're starting to see that in the tech world, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, speaking to that, one of the kind of moments in which we thought, okay, there might be a play here with helping salespeople build their reputation came from my experience at Glassdoor. So when I started at Glassdoor now over 7 years ago, which is kind of crazy to say, I was one of the first 20 employees of the company. And I recall very distinctly that when I first started, we would get on the phone with HR leaders and they were either unfamiliar with Glassdoor or they had loosely heard of it. But at the time, it was a very small company, a very small endeavor. And we would get on the phone with them and we would show them that there were these reviews that their employees had left on their on the company page, detailing both salary information as well as interview questions, as well as reviews of what it's actually like to work at the company. And what I found fascinating from that was the amount of vitriol that came from it. Yes, there were those exceptions. Notably, I think of Facebook, I think of Microsoft, I think of Goldman Sachs, I think of Bain. There were handfuls of companies that were like, this is amazing. What a great concept. This thing is going to be huge one day, and we need to invest in making this a place that really reflects our employment brand. But the vast majority of the people that we spoke to were horrified. And they were horrified for two reasons. One, they said, wait a minute, this is just a bunch of people that are disgruntled employees, or basically for every 100 happy employees we have one person who's pissed off, and that person's going, and this is just a rant site, and this is extortion or racketeering where, you want us to pay money in order to take reviews down. And none of which was true, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, Glassdoor had a firm divide, has to this day a firm divide between the sales side and the customer review, the B2C side, that was never crossed. But Yelp had just gotten in trouble. This is now 2010. Yelp had just gotten in trouble because their sales reps had been promising that small business owners that they would promote positive reviews and stuff. And so there is a lot of distrust around this user generated content. The second big objection was who the fuck cares? Who cares what some random person on the internet has to say? People are going to come to the source of truth, and the source of truth is our recruiter, or the source of truth is a meeting with our employees or our company. And people summarily dismissed Glassdoor as an idea because they're like, no one's going to trust what some random person says online. That's not how people make decisions. Now let's fast forward to 2018. My wife and I just took a trip throughout Europe. In every city we went to, there were two websites that I used most prevalently. One was TripAdvisor, right? And the second one was booking.com. Sure. And because Yelp is not as big there. And every time, all I did was type in seafood restaurant and then go to TripAdvisor and then see what was the highest rated seafood restaurants and read the reviews and see what it's like. Because as a tourist, as someone who's coming into a foreign country or into a foreign city, even in your home city, really, all you want to do is say, well, other people have been in the exact same position as me. I want to know what happened with those people before I make the same commitment. And I'm talking about a $25 piece of fish, right? We're not talking about a $25,000 or a $250,000 piece of software. Yeah. So if I'm a salesperson, and if I'm trying to convince someone to spend tens of or hundreds of thousands of dollars with my company, it would behoove me to be able to say, well, hey, there have been other buyers who have been in the exact same situation as you. Let me show you what they've had to say, and be able to use you say user-generated content. We very specifically here say it's customer content, or it's customer testimonials, and being able to use those as a way to, in some way give comfort, give trust. Build a foundation that lets them say, well, yes, I trust you, Garrett, and of course I like you, and of course, I'm excited to work with you. But it gives me even more reassurance to know that your customers feel the same way that I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's the TripAdvisor example is perfect. We can do so much, building trust and building rapport, but at the end of the day, it's not one person that's responsible for an entire sales process. There's so many different avenues in a company of marketing, customer success, channel. And we use a lot of these different avenues to get to prospects and to help us build rapport, help chip away at their wall in the beginning stages. But when you're getting, in the later stages of a sales cycle, and again, I believe that if it's not a dollars and cents deal, and it's actually something that's going to be impactful and has meaning, and there's high risk involved for a lot of prospects, especially in the enterprise space. There's typically a lot of perceived risk from the consumer's end. And so it's our role to, again, chip away at that wall, in my experience, subconsciously overcome that perceived risk without even needing to really address it, just by demonstrating that we understand what that risk is without them even needing to say it. But once we kind of get to that point where they trust and they know that we do understand, there's still that big kind of gap between, okay, I trust this person. I believe him. I am excited. He's gotten me excited about this product. And I don't think that people inherently think these things. I think these are just subconscious thoughts that kind of shoot through the synapses. But there is always that wonder of who else out there has done this and what was their experience like? Because there's been a lot of bait and switch that's gone on again for hundreds of years in any market. And, I still have people that think that somehow, at the end of the sales conversation, is this a scam? And it's like, no, we have 160 plus employees. Like, we have a reputation. We have a lot of customers. Like, we're not, no, it's not. And I think reviews and testimonials, they help in that, and they're invaluable in that part of the sales process, because there's really no other way to say, just take my word for it. People shouldn't have to take anyone's word for anything. They should have a forum, again, whether it's something like Glassdoor, when they're looking at different companies and they're researching through the interview process, or whether it's buying a pair of jeans, or whether it's going to a restaurant, or anything. There should be transparency. And I think that's what globalization and has brought, is a tremendous amount of transparency through the internet, and specific to sales. Like, of course it's going to drip down to sales and sales process at some point. And here we are in a somewhat early stage, but relatively mature compared to 2010. Right. And, now talking to companies like Bravado that are offering these kinds of forums for people to make better informed decisions, which is what we all want to do at the end of the day.
That's right. And I appreciate the kind words about, the Bravado platform, but I think, what you really hit the nail on the head, which is, in every sales cycle, there's that moment in which we see the buyer, the prospect, have a little bit of doubt. And that doubt typically comes when they're most excited, not when they're least excited. And it's like, wait a minute, I know you're a salesperson, and I know that you're trying to sell me something. And yes, everything you just said sounds really good, sir or ma'am. But am I falling for something here? And that fear of, am I falling for something here, is a really, really, I think it's a human instinct. I think it's because not only have we seen it in pop culture, and not only have we all just like personally experienced it in some way, but it's just like a part of the human condition. And so, that's the moment when they usually ask for a reference. And that's the moment when they usually want to talk to somebody else, or that's the moment when they try to go online and try to find somebody else that they can, or reach out to their network or whatever it is, and try to get a little bit of social proof, a little bit of social validation, in order to ensure that they're not making a mistake. And the problem is, most companies at that moment think the right move is to send the prospect a case study, or to direct them to their website. And I compare this again back to because I've long been of the belief that B2B is just a 10-year laggard of B2C. And whatever it is that happens in B2C, B2B follows it, but it just takes a while for us to get there. When I look at something like, Netflix, and I see, like, you go to Netflix's homepage and it's like $6.99 a month, no credit card required, 1 month free trial, click here to sign up, right? Or I go to Amazon and I see, one click to buy. And then I go to any B2B company's website and it's like contact sales, and there's all these like barriers to actually purchasing. But in this specific example, on the B2C side, imagine if you were trying to decide between two restaurants that you wanted to go to, or imagine you were trying to decide between two hotels that you wanted to book. Nobody goes to the hotel's website and like, it tries to figure out, based on the website of the hotel, which one,
the rooms.
Right. Nobody. Yeah. Let me go look at rooms. Nobody goes to a restaurant's website and like looks at like the content on like their website in order to make a decision. Sure, you'll go check out the menu, right? If the menu's on there, you'll go check it out. But that's not how you make the decision. The way you make the decision is you look at what other people had to say on some sort of an aggregator site like Yelp or TripAdvisor or Booking.com or whatever, right? And so I think that this is one of the fundamental flaws in the sales process, is that all of the content that you have around customer testimonials is all bottled up on your own personal website. And what we're trying to do with Bravado is give a platform that's a third party representation, validated customer testimonials that you can use in order to say, hey, go check out my page. You know, that I've worked with many other customers that have been in the exact same position as you, and you can check out what they've had to say about working with me. And you know, one of the interesting things that we've seen as a result of that, and we do a lot of tracking and measurement around this because, you know, that's the way of the world that we're in today. We've seen that over 65% of customers who have gotten to the reference stage and been shown a Bravado profile have not then followed up that request with a need to speak to somebody. So 2 and 3 reference requests are met digitally for Bravado members. And I always used to call this the 2-week delay in sales, which is they want a reference. Now you got to scramble through your CS team to find someone who's going to get on the phone with them. Then you get that person, and no, you can't hit up the same person over and over again because they're like, at a certain point, they're like, dude, I'm not on your payroll, right? Like, and so, you know, there's like some sort of a level of like, you know, maybe once a quarter I can ask you to do this or something, and then you find the person, you email them to ask if they're willing to do it. They agree to do it. Then you email the prospect and the customer, get them on the phone. Then they play calendar tag for a while. And then eventually, hopefully they get on the phone and they have a conversation. And sometimes that process can take a couple days if you're really lucky. Most of the time it takes a week, and usually it takes like 2 to 3 weeks. And so, you know, where you end up with is like a complete stagnation of the sales cycle for something that can easily be solved using a digital medium. And so that I think has been one of the prevalent use cases of Bravado for sales reps has been, hey, this is a way for me to accelerate my deal cycle and to be able to leverage digital credibility as a way of assuaging a customer who's like right in that moment of like, I'm not sure if I should do this or not, giving them the comfort that, hey, others have been in your shoes and they've walked away happy.
Yeah. No, I mean, you nailed it on the head. I mean, there's that lag time in the sales process. Not only can it kill deals, but it's also this mad scramble to find someone that can speak basically to everything that you've already talked about, but that's just a different voice. That's not a salesperson. And again, that's why it's so important. I mean, you know, we place tremendous importance on company reviews and those things in certain areas that we are. And I think like channel and partnerships, that realm of any business and speaking, you know, to the software space, channel and partnerships is such an important part of developing an identity for a company, because, you know, you kind of have this friend that has insight into people that you want to talk to. And you can use that friend in order to get to certain points in a conversation. And that's great, you know, and that gives credibility sometimes to smaller companies that are up and coming when you have a bigger, better known partner in whatever space that you're in. And on the flip side to that, is being able to showcase other people that have had a positive experience and also showcase why, you know, so that they know it's not bullshit, which a lot of people, especially today, people are, I feel like, so much more inherently skeptical. Like you were talking about, there's this innate drive that people have to be skeptical when something seems great. And I don't know if it comes to like basic self-preservation, you know, and not that I think anyone thinks they're going to die if they make the wrong choice, but that desire to not want to get into something that is not going to be good for them, or that they could be judged harshly on, or could adversely affect them. And, you know, setting up the deal in the right way, you have to counter that. And so without that type of, you know, like something like Bravado offers, really, you know, I try to counter that on a psychological level before, like during the sales process. And I think that's how a lot of salespeople have had to do it. Like you already have to go in knowing they're going to be sketched out by me at some point, no matter how well I represent myself and how intelligent I sound about this space and this product. Like you have to know they're going to try to probably back out. They're going to talk themselves out of this at some point. And they're never going to tell you. And you have to know that. And this is, I think you still have to have that approach to some degree. But, you know, I also, I know firsthand that if you have the ability to showcase your book of work in a positive light, that will also alleviate a lot of the burden of that mad scramble to kind of overcome that mental process that all buyers will go through at some point. I mean, I go through it when I order food at a restaurant. I'm like, should I have gotten the chicken? Should I have gotten the salmon? I don't know. Like, that's
completely inconsequential. I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, dude, you're going to eat like a million meals in your life. And,
exactly.
And it's just like one, and ultimately the difference between the chicken and the salmon is going to be negligible in your life. And yet we ruminate over it as if like we're deciding on a life partner or something. And it's like this mentality that we as human beings have, which is we always want to have the most optimal outcome, regardless of whether the incremental gain is worth the burden of consideration. And I think that psychologically has a massive impact in the way that sales is done. But at the same time, it is, you're right. Like, you have to play defense as a salesperson, knowing the fact that this will happen or come up at some point. And your ability to counter that is really one of the key, I would say, defining characteristics between a great and a good salesperson, where a good salesperson does all the right things, but it's maybe a better way of looking at this is like a great salesperson is like a great chess player, in the sense that, I don't know if you play chess, Garrett, but it's a passion of mine. And a great salesperson is somebody that makes a move knowing that this move could lead to one of two or three possible outcomes, and then no matter what the next move is, they're already ready for it. And so at no point are they caught flat on their feet. They're always just like ready and comfortable and willing to make the next move. And I find that a lot of that comes from being able to deeply connect with a buyer on that psychological level. To you mentioned, I loved what you said about at the very beginning about the inflection of their voice. I used to do this thing when I was on the phone with prospects, and to this day I still do it unconsciously when I'm speaking to people. I visualize their face and I close my eyes when I'm speaking to them, and I pretend as if I conjure up an image of that person like right in front of me, and so when they're speaking, when they're breathing, when they're typing, I try to channel what that person must be thinking or feeling at that moment, more so even than like necessarily taking it at the surface level what they're saying, and try to react to that, which always served me really well in sales. But
I mean that it's kind of what you have to do, again, if you want to be able to go above and beyond and not. I love to tell people, if you're behind and you need to work late, or, you want to get it done, or you want to go overboard, like, that's great. But I love to see people get it done in 8 or 9 hours in a day. I love to see people hitting their numbers, hitting the metrics that they want to be at so that they know they're on track. And I think a big part of that for a lot of salespeople with very aggressive goals is doing the little things the right way to give yourself the best chance with every single opportunity you have. And, I talk a lot in training around, like, once I have a BDR that moves into like an AE role and, going for the ask or closing the deal, it all obviously starts in that first call, right? It starts in the cold call. It starts with how we're presenting ourselves. And then we have the demo where we're displaying a product and relaying value to their business and their goals and their market and everything like that. But a lot of what people say, it's all bullshit. And you have to know that as well. Like, the reasoning that someone's not signing up. I mean, I would love to know the statistics. There's no Google Analytics for this, but I'd love to know the statistics for everyone who has said they were going to move forward with a deal and has backed out. What percentage of those people actually told the truth about why that is? When you ask someone, does this all make sense? Like, what percentage of people actually understand or retaining half of what you're saying? I truly believe there's a lot of sales reps out there that think that people are telling them the truth whenever they're speaking, even if it's nothing important. They're just having a conversation. Still, you have to see through everything they're saying. You have to understand what would prompt them to say something like this? What fears would they have? Somebody in this position with this type of business and this model and this budget. You have to know that most of what you're getting is just, it's a language and it's a form of interaction, but it's not real. And you have to see through that, and you have to connect with them again on that psychological level. But knowing first and foremost, whatever reasoning they're giving me for not wanting to do something, it means something else. And I have to figure that out. And I really have to bring myself outside of this linear conversation about their business and their sales model, and go way deeper than that. And again, it all comes back to trust and connecting and understanding. But I would really love to know, how truthful are people in this buying process? And I think we've all been there at some point. Like, there's definitely been times where I have said something that wasn't the truth to get out of a scenario. And we're all very similar, even though, everyone's different and unique. That's great. But we're all very similar as humans in the way in these like different scenarios that we find ourselves in. We react similar to one another. And so once you understand that, it's like you have to know, we got to go deeper than the surface level kind of bullshit that gets discussed in a lot of these in different points in the sales process. And maybe it's not something that you start with outright, like in the initial cold call, if that's how you're prospecting, or the initial email. But at a certain point, you have to kind of get real and get on the same page as far as what we're both here to do. And that's to grow in a positive way, regardless of what the product is, unless you're selling like reams of paper,
That's right. And I think that's a great point for us to end on, because you have twice used the term bullshit in this conversation, and I think that whether that's on the side of the buyer or on the side of the seller, there is a lot of bullshit in sales.
Yeah.
And it's one of our mottos here at Bravado is no bullshit. We have a fun T-shirt that I'll be shipping your way.
Nice.
That encapsulates that motto. But Garrett, the thing that really strikes me about this conversation, and I hope for all of the sellers who are listening to this, it's the fact that you can't take things on surface value. You just can't. Like, and if you ask someone the question, "Oh, does this all make sense?" They're going to say yes. Nobody's ever going to say no. Because what would ever prompt you to admit that you didn't understand something? Like, that would be, most of the time the buyer is just trying to get through the demo. They're trying to get through the pitch. They're waiting for you to get to pricing. Like, they're not going to sit there and ask you to restate a value prop that you went through or go through a flow again. I mean, there's just no way. And so you as a salesperson have to be smart about what types of questions you ask. And one of the things I used to do a lot in sales is, if I was suspicious that someone was no longer listening, is that I would just stop talking. Like, in the middle of a sentence, I just completely stop talking and just be quiet. And what would happen is, a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. And it's hard. It's hard as a say, because you want to fill the void.
Oh, it's gut-wrenching.
5 seconds. And eventually the person would be like, hello? And I'd be like, oh, hey, are you there? And they'd be like, oh, yeah, I lost you for a second. And it just brings them back. And it's like these little tricks that you learn in sales on how to keep someone's attention. And then like, okay, this person's not actually paying attention to me because it took them 6 seconds to realize that I stopped talking. And that's 6 seconds is a very long time to be on the phone with somebody with no sound coming on either end. Or you hear someone typing in the background, right? And you're like unsure if they're taking notes or if they're writing emails. And again, I just stop talking. And if the clicking stops, then I know that they're actually taking notes. And if the clicking keeps going for a while, then I know they're not writing anything I'm saying. And it's like just being able to understand that, I think is really fun. Garrett, I really appreciate your time here today. One last question for you, which is, I'm sure that there's going to be listeners of ours who want to follow up with you or would have further questions. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Email and email.
Cool. Cool. So here's what we'll do. We'll take your email address and we'll post it in attachment to this show. So if someone wants to reach out, they can do so via email. But Garrett, thank you so much for your time. You clearly have put a lot of thought into the world of sales. I would love to pick this back up and do a version 2 of this with you at some point.
That would be awesome.
Because you're great, man. I love it. I love your thoughts, and I really, really appreciate your time. This has been a fantastic conversation, one of the best ones we've ever done.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was like eerie how you would start to say something and I would like identify with exactly what you were saying at certain points. But no, I'd love to do a round 2 at some point. And yeah, again, thank you so much for your time and having me. I love sharing ideas in this trade that we have, which I think is something that hasn't gone on enough in sales. So I think it's awesome.
Cool, man. And I'll look forward to seeing you on Bravado. Have a good one, sir. Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye.